Hi everyone, Miss Elizabeth here from First Congregational Church of Muskegon Confirmation class. And today we continue our unit about lifelong learning, and our lesson is about being open to the changes that life brings. We are following the progressive Christianity curriculum that First Congregational Church has purchased, although we do not own the copyrights to this material. Our Unit 8 is about committing to a path of lifelong learning, compassion, and selfless love. So, let's talk about change. What are some different ways we can look at change? This past year, with the global pandemic, change has, in many ways, been more dramatic than ever. So many things have changed, and that can make us uncomfortable. One change that I made is to stop carrying a purse and only use my pockets. I started collecting change in this little jar, and then there was a nationwide shortage of change. Suddenly, stores were not giving back any change because there were no coins. So, reducing change is not always a good thing. Another way to talk about change in our lives is to identify whether a change is in the external things or in the internal spiritual things, the way that we process change. Our perception of how we experience change can be guided by what we have learned as paradigms. And paradigms, I'm not talking about 2 dimes in your change. A paradigm is a typical example or patterns to follow. Confucius has a quote that I'd like to read to you about this, and it says, "They must often change who would be constant in happiness or wisdom." They must often change. Have you ever heard of change ringing? Change ringing is a method for ringing bells, and usually it's the big bells in church or cathedral towers, to ring them in a pattern that has each bell ringing in a sequence called a change through all the variations of changes for that number of bells without any repeats. Uniqueness, in that any row can only be rung once, is considered essential. This is called truth in change ringing. Change ringing gives different names to the sets of bells according to how many bells are used. As it happens, an 8-bell pattern is called a major. And since my last name is Major, I looked for a major change ringing track to play for you so you can hear what that sounds like. It's not really a melody, but it has a structure to it. And here is Jennifer Iris, Simon Mellon, David Pipe, and Philip Iris ringing a peal of double helix major on handbells. So here we go. So that gives you an example of change ringing. Did you catch the title of that peal, as it's called? Not a song, a peal. It was called Double Helix. Where have you heard that before? Did you know that the change ringing is called that because it comes from the pattern, when written down, of how those bells are rung? And that shape of a double helix, like my earrings today, is the shape of the building blocks for our own uniqueness, our DNA. That's the shape of it. And a Bible verse that is our scripture reading for the day, part of it, comes from the book of John, chapter 4, verse 24, says, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. This points us to an inner place of understanding, and from there, changes we experience outwardly may be seen and experienced in a different way, unique to each of us. We can be like a downhill skier who responds gracefully to every bump along the course because she holds on to her own center of stability. Do you remember a lesson about turtle eggs that we had a few weeks ago in Unit 7, Integrity of the Earth? We talked then about rhythms and balances in nature. Dealing with change is a lot like the cycles and rhythms of life. Nature is never static. It's in a state of constant change. Think of a tree's concentric rings. When a tree is cut down, you can see on that end, on the inside, all these rings. That tree is recording the changes going on around it that year. There are unique challenges happening all the time, but the tree is growing constantly and through it all. Seeing life as a constant flow and not a fixed, repeating pattern that defines and limits us may help to transform the uncertainty of each day from something to be feared into a joyful adventure to be shared. Let's finish with a quote from a musician. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Thank you, Leonard Cohen. Thanks for listening. See you next time.